Hello and welcome to Consciousness TV. Today's session is a Q&A that's been inspired by some of Adyashanti's writings, which focus on the reality of painful emotions arising that we as human beings need to discover a way of being with that is healing, that is embracing, that is accepting, and allows space for these thoughts, feelings and emotions, that doesn't negate them. So I'll be exploring that topic today from the perspective of the human energy field and also soul consciousness, higher states of consciousness, and the relationship between those two things, between our suffering and our transpersonal consciousness. So it's a huge subject. It's one that Adyashanti has written about and spoken about for many, many years, and one which I will just be touching the surface of today, really, in this Q&A session. So we'll begin by looking at the human condition, the condition of our mind-body field as it is for most people, and looking at that without judgment, without expecting that it be any different than it actually is. And from that awareness, then looking at how the field heals, how the mind-body field heals, and the kind of states that arise as it heals. So it would be true to say that when one sits down to meditate or engage in a spiritual practice, the things that have been hidden in the subconscious or the things that have been suppressed come to the surface. Now they may come rushing to the surface and be extremely intense, or they may just trickle to the surface. There may be unwanted thoughts, unwelcome feelings, unwelcome sensations that arise during spiritual practice and also during daily life. And that's inevitable unless you have either not been on this planet very long or not had very deep experiences of being human. You're going to meet this to some degree or another. And it's nothing to be frightened of or to get into a judgment cycle about. It is literally an inevitable part of the process of awakening. And it's not a sign that anything is wrong. So I know that for Rama and myself, we've had a lot to meet in that place, a lot to work our way through that was excruciatingly painful, not just a bit uncomfortable. And that the willingness to be compassionate towards ourselves, to suspend judgment and to be generous towards ourselves has been essential, and that was something that we both learned along the way. It wasn't something that we had in all its completeness at the beginning of our journeys spiritually in this lifetime. It was a journey of forgiving the unforgivable, of meeting pain that was intolerable, physically and emotionally intolerable, as well as meeting those things that we merely disliked about ourselves, that we wished weren't there, from the perspective of self-improvement, of being a better person. So in this process, one of the things that we learnt to let go of gradually was the idea of perfection, of a fixed idea of perfection, and instead learn to trust the process. I'd say learning to trust the process, trust the body's healing process, trust the psychological healing process, and at the bottom of all that, the luminous love intelligence of the soul that was driving the entire process was absolutely essential, and something that developed over time through experience. And it wasn't something that necessarily looked very nice from the outside or conformed to any ideas of what spiritual awakening should be or how it should appear. It wasn't something that one necessarily reads about in spiritual teachings, depending on which teachings you're studying or you're following. But in our lives, in Rama's life and my life, it was an irresistible process. It was like surfing a wave. You're there on your surfboard and the wave is coming from behind you. Either you learn to surf that wave or you go under the water. It wasn't a maybe. It wasn't a personal choice at the deepest level. It was an inevitability. It was something that had been decided before we were born, something that we had decided upon, a gift that we had wanted to give ourselves. And there are many people for whom that is true. Many people engaged in spiritual practices want to give themselves the ultimate gift of awakening. Not just feeling temporarily more calm or serene, or gaining extra understanding about spiritual matters, or gaining psychic abilities, but really giving themselves the gift of awakening. And there are two facets to that awakening. One is dealing with, being with the stirring of all the samskaras, the sufferings, the conditionings, the imprints that are in our mind-body field. And the other is trusting and opening to a massive inflow of consciousness, massive inflow of cosmic consciousness. And not shutting down because of the overwhelming or unfamiliar nature of that inflowing consciousness. And those two things dance. They're dancing all the time. There'll be times when it feels like you're mostly being with your emotional issues, being with your constructs, being with your physical issues, being with the circumstances of your life that you may not like, that you may not agree with. And there are other times when really just breathing and relaxing and letting go into that inflow of supra-consciousness is the main focus of your attention. It's a bit like being in childbirth, that you can prepare for childbirth all you like and go to the classes and you can read books and you can talk to friends and you can talk to your midwife. But actually when you go into labour, your body takes over. And the training leading up to childbirth is really learning not to panic, learning to breathe and to relax and to go with the process. And it's exactly the same in spiritual awakening. That there are times where all we can do is recite the mantra, breathe those deep breaths, consciously relax the body and relax the mind while consciousness does its work within us. So this is all beyond the realm of the mind. It's all beyond the realm of controlling things with thought or understanding things as intellectual concepts. This is direct experience, and really spiritual awakening is like childbirth, in that it is a direct experience. It's a physiological, energetic, as well as psychological and cognitive experience. It affects all levels of your human self. And it's a process of integrating a massive amount of supraconsciousness into a very conditioned, small, specific and intimate little vessel that we call the human personality and the human mind-body field. And at times when we're stuck in our samskaras, we're stuck in our imprints, in our conditioning, in our thoughts and feelings which are heavy and repetitive, our human life can feel like a prison we want to escape from. And yet the more we try and escape, the worse we feel, the more disassociated we become, and the more we delay our awakening. So bringing ourselves back to being present with what is in a way that is actively warm and loving is at the very heart of this process. It's not a cold process. The acceptance is not a cool mental agreement to stay present. It's a warm hug that you give to yourself. It's an open-hearted embracing of whatever you are experiencing within you and whatever is triggering you in your life. Wherever you feel powerless, helpless, bad and out of control, staying present with those imprints. And some of them will just be playing out inside you, kind of invisibly. Some of them will be playing out in your relationships and your interactions with others. And some will be playing out as circumstances that appear to be happening to you, but are actually part of that holographic constructed reality that you have been born to heal and transform and awaken within in this incarnation. So it's a gift you've given yourself to face this particular aspect of your ancient imprints, your holdings, your clenchings in the body, your beliefs about yourself and about life. And as you do this, consciousness begins to do its work within you. The light begins to impact and transform your mind-body field in a very real way, a very tangible way, change its vibration. And your body and your field begin to function more like a prism than a prison. Some people are using terminology such as moving from carbon to crystalline, which to some degree describes the move from something that's very dense, very heavy, very solid, something you can't see through, to something that is fine, transparent, and that reflects light. And that is really what is happening inside the mind-body field. That we are becoming less dense, that the space between our atoms is increasing, and that the light of consciousness is becoming more active, more viscerally tangible to us, more available, more active inside our mind-body field. So we're going to be seeing a lot more of this happening in a lot more people over the next few hundred years. And in the past, these processes have tended to happen in very contained circumstances, very supported, specific spiritual circumstances, where one is companioned on the path in the company of like-minded people. So that all the weird stuff, all the strange occurrences, all the awakening of multi-sensory perception and all the stirring of the imprints is considered natural, normal, it's supported and it's understood. Whereas today we're seeing it happen much more frequently in the midst of ordinary everyday life, where there isn't such a degree of support or necessarily understanding in the people around us of what we're going through. So it is important that we understand and have confidence in this process right where we are, right where we live now, in our life circumstances, in our current relationships, which for most of us is not in a nunnery, is not in a monastery, not in a lamasery, not in the Himalayas. It's in the middle of a big city, or it's in the midst of family life and work life. It does get very wild though. The experiences, as you trust, as you open, as you say your yes, again and again and again, and the process deepens, it does get wilder and wilder, and further out from that place of control that we're used to maintaining within ourselves. So it's common to have bleed through of past life memory, or childhood memory, or womb memory of the time when we were growing in our mother's womb, or when we were preparing to incarnate. It's common to become much more sensitive to vibrations in our environment, in the world around us, to subtleties in our relationships, to energetic environments, and to shifts and changes in even changes in food, changes in the weather, changes in aspects to do with our physical body. We may become highly sensitized to everything for a while. So it seems sometimes as though there is no aspect of who we thought we were that remains untouched by this process. And if you start to have kundalini, you may have fevers, high fevers. You may have experiences like rushes of electricity or champagne bubbles flooding through your body, accompanied by all sorts of sensory stimulation and changes that make you wonder if you are in fact losing the plot, if you are going mad. And it's really reassuring to read about and hear about other people's experiences during the awakening process, and to get a perspective on what is happening, a broader, larger perspective on things that feel very personal, very intimate, and very fundamental in your own inner being, in your body, in your psyche. So this turning of the body from a prison of matter, into a prism of light, is truly incredible transformation, no less incredible than a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. It really is a complete metamorphosis, and everything that was the caterpillar becomes the butterfly. Everything that you have ever been as a human being becomes part of your awakened butterfly self. It's not that it's discarded, that it's rejected, that it's left behind. It's all included, integrated and incorporated into your light body, into your butterfly nature. And so that's a very reassuring understanding, to claim already now in this moment, no matter what you're experiencing, what's happening in your process. You may be going through a difficult patch, or feel like you're stagnating, or things have stopped, or like your insides are being rubbed with sandpaper, or that your nose is being rubbed in the very thing you hate the most, and you feel powerless in your life in the face of certain circumstances and situations. When you're experiencing those kinds of things, it's so reassuring to remember that you are integrating whatever you face with love. That you are bringing from that raw matter of your human experience everything that you have learned, all your life lessons, all the love that you have developed through these experiences is being brought into your butterfly self, into your light body nature. And that one day you will look back on every single moment you have ever lived ever, and that is a lot of moments. And every one will appear as a perfect jewel to you. Yogananda once said that he saw each of his incarnations as a pearl on a string of pearls. And for each of us, no matter how much suffering we've been through, or how much boredom we've been through, how much mundane ordinariness we have experienced, each moment appears as having equal value. Each moment appears as a precious experience of consciousness within matter, unlike any other, unique, occurring within the jitterbug effect of the universe. And in the jitterbug effect, everything exists only for a microsecond. It's not a continuous flow, it is actually microsecond by microsecond awareness incarnating into the field of experience that it has chosen for itself. And in every moment that we stay fully present, that we bring ourselves into this experience that we're having, we begin to sense that immensity, that grace, that inherent value and meaning. Every time we pull out, we disassociate, we run away from an experience, we don't embody fully within it. And the matter runs itself on automatic. So we feel even less control, we feel even more powerless when we dissociate. As we come into the matter, we merge with the matter, and the matter becomes consciousness. It's a bit like dropping drops of ink into water. And if you imagine that the ink is consciousness and that the water is the matter, that the consciousness is suffusing that water with itself. The ink is permeating that water until in the end you can't tell the difference between the ink and the water. For example, if it was blue ink that was being dropped into the water would become blue. If it was pink ink that was being dropped into the water would become pink. And so when we are experiencing our mind-body field as full of samskaras, as full of conditioning, imprints, unfinished business, old emotions and attitudes and thoughts and feelings, that's pretty muddy water. And when that ink drops in, when that soul consciousness drops into that water, it's not seen in all its vividness. It's mixed with all the muddiness. But imagine if that water was clear, crystalline, transparent, more prism than prison. Then the light of consciousness would be readily visible within that substance, within that water. And so what's happening when we sit down to meditate, or when we engage in practices that bring about spiritual awakening, is that we are preparing our mind-body field to become the vessel of consciousness. Consciousness, as it comes in, as it increases the pressure through its presence, stirs up that muddy water so that the muddiness can be integrated, so that the frequency can be heightened and lifted, and the water can become clear. Consciousness doesn't need healing. Consciousness expressing itself as light is what it is. Pure observer, pure awareness, infinite consciousness. The mind-body field is a substance that can be encoded with anything. It can be encoded with stories and untrue ideas. It can be cluttered with emotions that have not been worked through to their natural conclusion, that have never been resolved. And these imprints, these unresolved emotions, these untrue thoughts, these pictures and identities get layered on top of each other. Layer after layer after layer, become quite complex. But really, they're all awaiting our loving awareness. They're awaiting the fire of consciousness. And the way that we bring the fire of consciousness to these layers of suffering, these stories, this muddy water, is through the opening of our hearts, is through a trust in that light that is already deep within the heart, that is unconditional loving awareness, that is the microcosm of the macrocosm of cosmic awareness. Your heart center is a macrocosm disguised as a microcosm. So when you first consider your heart, you might consider human affection, that this is the doorway of human relating, human love, affection and connectedness. As you go deeper and deeper within the heart, you begin to experience your own transpersonal love, which is no less intimate than your personal love. Just as the butterfly contains the qualities of the caterpillar, your transpersonal love is composed of your awakened human love. And as you go deeper still through your layers of essence, you begin to enter soul and presence and experience your unity with the heart of all creation, with the point from which everything arises, the point from which all love arises, all relationship arises, the one before it becomes the many, the one that contains the many. And so your heart is both the microcosm of your human experience, and it is the macrocosm of cosmic love and cosmic consciousness, of non-duality. So you could say that non-duality dwells always within your personal self, within your personal love and within every single moment of your experience as a human being. An awakening is really the opening of those inner doors so that you experience yourself in all those facets, all those dimensions of existence, all the way back through into non-duality. And you are confined by nothing. You have freedom in everything, on all planes of existence. So as your field heals, as your mind-body field heals, you enter a new kind of resting state. And I remember many, many years ago, before I started spiritual practices, when I woke up in the morning, I would meet sadness in my body. Deep despair and sadness. I couldn't deny it. I would often cry for an hour before I could get up in the morning. That was my resting state at the time. I couldn't deny it. I couldn't avoid it. I had to just be with it and find a way to heal that. And as that healed, over many years of meditation and spiritual practices, my resting state changed. Now, when I wake up in the morning, I experience an incredible luminosity in my body. It's there completely effortlessly. Some mornings it's there so intensely that I don't feel like I have a physical body. I feel like a vast space with the sun shining in it, like sky with the sun shining in it. Other mornings I feel like a soft liquid floating and a gentle light shining within that fluid. Again, not solid, quite transparent. And other mornings I wake up and I feel a bit more 3D. I feel a bit more, here's my body. But there's still an incredible spaciousness in that place where there once was despair. Absolute, emotional, physical, textural, very tangible despair. And so I know that it's possible to heal anything that we contain, anything that we experience as human beings, and that there is no need to stay in a painful resting state. That choosing to stay in that is not what acceptance is all about. Acceptance is loving yourself right where you are, is loving the one who is having this experience of suffering. For me, it was the experience of despair. And every time I turned towards myself with even a little bit of love, I would grieve and cry, and some of that pain would flow out of my body and shift that painful resting state a little closer to this spaciousness and luminosity that I experience now. So what I'd like to do now is just draw a little on this whiteboard. I've got my whiteboard here today. And just give a little basic indication of the layers of the field in relation to supraconsciousness. So here is a really simple diagram. As you can see, I'm no artist. I leave that up to Rama. This diagram is a simple symbolic representation of the different dimensions of consciousness, beginning with the first point of expression of our cosmic conception, which we'll call the monadic level, the star of light. Each of these levels is progressively more dense than the one before it. So on this side we have the human energy field, the HEF, the mind-body field, physical body, etheric body, astral, mental body, the human personality in these squiggly lines here. Between the world of the soul and the human energy field, the human mind-body field, we have the world of essence, or the causal planes, which includes the Hara dimension, and the beginning of the worlds of form. That's not physical form, but they are worlds of form through which consciousness embodies in one way or another. So in every moment you are all of this, regardless of whether you are experiencing yourself as this or not. So you might be over here in the human energy field experiencing your physical sensations, experiencing emotions and experiencing thoughts, and that's your world. This world here continues to exist. It's the substrate of your human energy field. Without it, you wouldn't have a mind-body field. So during the awakening process, what's happening is that the mind-body field is becoming less dense, more transparent, and more aware of these subtler dimensions of existence and the consciousness that is giving rise to them. So the world of the monad and the soul, those dimensions are dimensions of pure consciousness. There's no form on those dimensions at all. At most you exist as light, consciousness as light, which emerges from the clear or transparent light of non-dual existence. So the monad is the first point of light that comes from the clear light of non-dual reality. From the monad, there's a further personification that we term the soul. Depends what tradition you follow or what terminology you're used to applying to these dimensions. I call this plane the plane of soul, that appears as diffuse, white, pure observer consciousness without thought, feeling or sensation. So it's observer without any body of experience. It's aware only of its own existence. This consciousness creates a causal body composed of multiple layers of very, very fine vibration, which at the highest level have barely any form at all. And I've been writing about this in the book Transcendence Journey of the Soul. There's a whole section on the different dimensions of existence and the structure of the human energy field from the causal levels down to the physical body. So I'm just giving you the short form of it here today. The causal planes carry the records of the soul, including the soul vows, the soul contracts, the soul intentions and plan, and also the unfinished business in the Akashic records, the material that still needs to be processed through human life. So that is then brought into incarnation through our mind-body field, which forms in the womb as we're growing in our mother's womb, and then develops throughout the course of our incarnation. And this material from the Akasha, from the soul records that we have chosen to work with in this incarnation, gets fed through the column of light, through the Hara dimension, and into our mind-body field, so we can work with it. And it's kind of like a hologram. It's like a story in a bubble, or a bubble encoded with a story. And so wherever we go, we're living inside this bubble of our own unfinished Akashic material that we have chosen as an act of love to process, integrate, and transform into love. So we choose the story, and once we're in incarnation, we choose moment by moment how we're going to relate to that story, how we're going to relate to our own inner world, our sense of self, our relationships, and our life circumstances. And until we change that material, we're in Groundhog Day. We're basically in this recurring story, holographically imprinted all through our mind-body field, from that Hara dimension up, so that we can bring those aspects of ourselves which have gotten out of resonance with our divine nature, bring them back into resonance with who we truly are as the light of consciousness. So we're bringing love to the places where we've fallen out of love with life. We've fallen out of love with our own existence. And as we do that, the field becomes more transparent, more radiant, more peaceful. And the light of supraconsciousness, the light of the soul and the monad, and the colours of our essence, the colours of our ascended love, become more visible within our mind-body field. So instead of this being muddy and full of story and full of thoughts and feelings that are out of resonance with the light of consciousness, increasingly our field becomes coherent with the light of consciousness. It becomes the prism and not the prison. And it's all beautifully orchestrated like a symphony, and motivated and empowered and energized through unconditional love, through the unconditional love that arises from the deepest levels of our own being. And the states that, or the new resting states that arise as we go through this process are truly beautiful. And they're being spoken about more and more now. We hear more and more references to gratitude now, to reverence, to appreciation of life, and to self-love. And those are qualities, vibrational qualities of consciousness, which we experience as our energy field heals, and we enter this coherence with the deeper levels of our being. However, we can also support ourselves in entering those states more readily by kind of faking it till we make it. So instead of waiting for our life circumstances to improve and then feeling happy, sort of putting the cart before the horse, instead we cultivate an attitude of appreciation, of wonder, of gratitude before our circumstances change, and bring our mind-body field into that beautiful new resting state that is coherent with the light of our own consciousness. As we do that, miracles happen. We become creators again. Creators of realities that express essence, the good, the beautiful and the true. And we experience the fulfillment that comes from that expression. So rather than plodding our way through difficult circumstances and feeling powerless inside our own hologram, we claim our divine sovereignty again, claim our power to create, not so much in a sense of seeking happiness through constructing circumstances, but seeking the happiness that comes through feeling authentically who we truly are, feeling the joy of who we truly are, the infinite beauty and goodness of who we truly are. And as we enter those states, as we turn attention towards those states and they become more normal for us, our outer world changes. The substance of this hologram, this unfinished business, changes. We transform the content of our own subconscious. We transform the vibratory field, the hologram in which we've been living, and we create literally a new reality for ourselves. And in the process of doing that, we realize that we were always creating realities. However, we were often creating unconsciously, creating realities that were really reflections of what was going on around us, of what we were told to believe, what we were taught to value. And in those circumstances, we felt powerless and afraid, even when we appeared to have the perfect set of circumstances. When we became rich or famous or successful, or we were considered beautiful, any of those things were always accompanied by fear and anxiety, because we never claimed ourselves at the deepest level, understood that we were the light of consciousness, that we were love, that we are love, and that we are free to create whatever we wish to create as the love that we are. So what's happening now is that we're seeing a greater emphasis on the process of creating reality and the process of self-love. And they all connect together. Non-duality, spiritual awakening, creativity, self-love, healing our suffering, and creating the life that we love are all different aspects of the same process. And more we're going to come to experience those things as being connected, as being aspects of this same experience. So no matter whether you are working on your own suffering at the moment, or you're working to change or improve circumstances or relationships or your health, or you're seeking to awaken to non-dual awareness, or you are wanting to be more creative, more expressive, more dynamic, you are literally focusing in the way that is perfect for you. If you're feeling called to that, if it's present in your life, present in your awareness, if it's in your face and you can't get away from it, it is perfect. And no aspect is less than any other aspect. That's been one of the major lessons that I've learned over the last 35 years, is that working on your suffering is no less spiritual than working on becoming non-dual in your awareness. It's just another aspect of the same thing. Working to become more unconditionally loving towards others and becoming more unconditionally loving towards yourself are aspects of the same thing. And everything is perfect. It is always perfectly what you need, arising in the moment that you need it. So I think we'll leave the Q&A there today. There's plenty of material there for contemplation and reflection. I'm writing about this at length in the book Transcendence Journey of the Soul, which will be published next year, and Rama is making the illustrations, the graphics for the book, which will be incredible. They're already amazing in their draft state. And if there's a takeaway from today's Q&A, it would be, for me it would be, that no matter how heavy or difficult or challenging your experience is, it is not a punishment, it's a gift. And that your willingness to turn towards yourself with love is always the key to your healing. And that your healing and your awakening are intimately, inextricably intertwined with one another. And to value yourself deeply, as deeply, in the moments where you are encountering your samskaras, your imprints, your conditioning, your suffering, as in the moments when you are experiencing the beauty of your light or the incredible vast love of transpersonal consciousness, to value all those things equally and to breathe through them, to relax into them, and to trust the process. Trust the process with your whole heart, with your whole being. Trust the intelligence, the massive intelligence that is orchestrating your life process. So that's been Q&A today on Consciousness TV. Please send us any questions if you have them, and also any questions you'd like us to discuss for our next Q&A. Thank you.